Hey everyone, happy Thursday. I'm popping in to answer another couple of questions that came in about Feng Shui related stuff. This one specifically was about what to do with things that might be giving off a bad vibe, but are still useful or needed. And in this specific example, the questioner was asking about a table that they had acquired from a neighbor's house. And the table had been left out for the trash after some renters had moved out, and the renters had been kicked out because of non-payment. And so there's a little bit of a financial lack probably attached to the table. And so I'm coming in and I'm going to answer that question because I think it's a great question. The first thing I'll say is that if you believe something is going to affect or be giving off a bad vibe or affecting your life because of its history, it is going to end up affecting and giving off that bad vibe and affecting your life in a negative way because you've already decided that. And so there are ways that you can sort of ask yourself that question, from like as you walk by this piece, does it constantly pop into your head that, oh, that's right, I got that from the people who got kicked out? Or does it constantly bring up a little, like that little, like almost like in the back of your mind question that pops up that you can disregard it if you really try, but it is continuing to pop up, that like hidden limited belief, hidden story that's consistently popping up about this piece when you look at it or when you pay attention to it or when you sit at it. If that story keeps coming up, even if you try to push it down, then it's probably impacting you and your energy and your potential and your belief that of whether or not it's going to affect your energy and your life. Some people are able to clear that energy. So there are some techniques that you can do to clear energy and to cut energy cords and to really change that story around the piece. And there's a lot to be said. I work with a lot of clients who repurpose furniture. They are, always seeking out pieces that are vintage or bringing that into their decor. And so those pieces are bringing in an energy with them, whether you're aware of it or not. Like in this case, you're aware of the history, and so that amplifies it. You may be bringing pieces in that you don't even know what the history are, but they're still carrying that energy and that frequency of whatever their story and history is. So anytime you bring in a piece anytime you bring in a piece of furniture, anything, whether it's new from the factory or something that's vintage that you've picked up at a store or something that's been gifted to you or handed down to you, I really think it's important to take the time to clear the piece. Even if it's brand new, it's bringing, the history of all the people that worked on it, all of the travel and that it went through, all of the storage spaces that it was in along the path to get to you. So clearing the piece is a very powerful thing to do. And also, intentionally blessing the piece or setting and infusing an intention on it so that it is, you're sort of putting your mark on it. And some quick ways that so my husband collects vintage furniture, and so we definitely have gone through this. My mother-in-law just arrived. She's living with us now. She brought a lot of things that have been in her family and her life for many years, and so now those things are coming into our home. And so I think this is important, and this is a practice that I do all the time because of that. My first step is that I try to leave it outside for a little bit. So if it can sit outside in the sun and under the moon for a day or two, I think that's a great way to clear the energy of it. I also do bell ringing around it. I do smudging around it. I will wash the piece with sometimes charged water and a blend of essential oils. And then, like I said, I set an intention over it and I infuse what I want into the piece for an energy. So if you are able to overcome the story that you know about the piece, this practice of energy clearing it can be really powerful. It's also really helpful. Sometimes people will completely repurpose or redesign a piece. So that is changing the history and giving it new life. If you paint it, if you break it into pieces and mix it with other pieces and really make it into a new piece of something, that's very powerful. Your changing the look and the feel and literally writing a new story for the piece when you do things like that. And there's also that cord cutting that you can do. There's an energy practice called cord cutting where you can, just sort of cut the energetic cord that's between you and that piece. So sort of cutting off the old story around that piece. So you can bring it in, and but you got to be honest with yourself. You can do all of those practices of energy clearing and setting a new intention with the piece. But if you still find that you're walking past it and it's popping into your mind about the history, or maybe you have brought in a piece that's a family heirloom and it's like every time you walk by, you can hear the person who owned its like voice. Maybe there's like a critical voice that they always had with you in life, and that pops into your mind as you pay attention to the piece. It just might not be worth keeping. Like in that case, I think the vibe is not something that you can move beyond, and it's probably better to let the piece go than to have that energetic, emotionally charged pull on you all the time. And the second part of this question was whether or not to put this table that was in question into the bedroom, which is the financial corner of this person's home. And I think that based on the fact that the table was released because of some financial hardships, if that old story about where the table came from can't be erased, I definitely wouldn't put it in the wealth corner or the financial corner of your home. So that's my thoughts on that piece. So I think that that's a really important thing to pay attention to. Please know that everything that you bring into your home is energy. It has its own frequency, it has its own vibration, its own story. You can amplify that story based on what you know about it, so that that piece can become very powerful and positive in your life and in your home. It can also become very negative and kind of pulling and draining on you. So there are practices that you can do to release any negativity that's attached to it, which sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So you just have to be honest with yourself about whether or not it's influencing your subconscious thoughts or beliefs or energy as you move through life. The second part of this question was also really powerful and also related to bringing or dealing with things that are maybe have a negative connotation to them or a bad vibe. And this is really more about releasing somebody else's stuff. So let me see if I can summarize it a little bit. The family member has passed away several years ago, but they left behind a lot of stuff that's stored in a room in the house, and also things that are out in the yard and in other places. It's a big pull on the need to feel like this person has to clean up all that stuff. But also the person knows that some of this stuff is valuable and that there are thieves in the area. There are people who might want to take it, come get it, whatever. So there's this like the responsibility to keep it protected, as well as this responsibility to go through and clear it out and figure out what to do with it. So that's a big energy pull right there, like that responsibility to be taking care of the stuff after somebody's gone, that responsibility to be protecting it. And there's so much energy and emotion around that stuff because it's from a loved family member, and it may be things that represent their life and family history, things that were important to them. And so there's so much attached to it. It's more than just the physical item. It's all of that stuff attached to it. And it's all of that story that makes it hard to go deal with, right? It's hard to like go face all of that stuff. And so I did a video yesterday, which was about how long does it take Feng Shui to start working to change your luck. And that was related. We talked a little bit about if you're doing all this decluttering and you're not getting the energy benefits, you're not feeling the difference, you're not getting the luck coming through despite all the decluttering, when does it work? When does it start clicking in? And one of the things I talked about in that video was that sometimes you're kind of barking up the wrong tree. So you're doing all this work, either putting all these feng shui cures in place or doing all this decluttering in the moment, but you're actually working around the real energy block, the real stuff that is stopping the flow of energy. And I think that in this case, that's probably what's going on. You're doing all that decluttering and using up your vital personal energy to clear stuff that's in the peripheral of the home and avoiding this big, heavy chunk that's right in the middle and really, truly blocking your energy. And at the same time, truly an energetic, mental, emotional bandwidth drain on you because it's there and you know that ultimately you have to face it. So that's one thing I'll say about that. So you're kind of circling around and hitting on other things that are easier to deal with. They're not as emotionally charged. You're still taking a lot of time and energy and effort, so you're still feeling drained and you're not getting the result. It's because this other stuff is the real sticking point. And it's the real sticking point because you do have to face all those emotions that are attached to the dad's stuff, and the grief and the old stories that have to be revisited as you go through it all. So that's very emotionally draining. And even like it's like I don't want to deal with that. Like I just don't want to do it. So I don't want to go through that energy emotional process. So you kind of push it off and hold it off. But it's also about avoiding the decisions that need to be made about these items. And, do I keep it? Do I sell it? Do I give it away? That's a huge thing to actually, make the decision and make a final decision about things. And so you're lingering around, working around doing that hard work. And so that's what I think is part of the problem with this. The other thing that came up for me when I read this question that came in was, it said, we have thieves in the area and he has some good pieces that we've been holding on to. This is harsh, and it may not be relevant in this particular case, but and without having a one-on-one conversation, I don't know. But normally if I were working one-on-one with somebody and we were talking about things and what to move on and what to release or what's getting in the way, we have a conversation, and that conversation helps me know what to talk about and what to focus on. We haven't had that conversation, so I'm just throwing all of the potential things out there. And this is a little bit harsh, but literally the first thing that popped into my mind was, let them steal it. Like literally let them take it. Because right now, it's not being honored, it's not being appreciated. And that may have been the way it was even when the dad was alive. Like he may not have honored it, he may not have appreciated it. But now it's kind of fallen into the next generation's lap. And still, 4 years later, it's not being honored, it's not being appreciated. And there's this whole energy around all the things we just talked about, the decision-making process and the emotions attached to it. And there's this whole energy of, I've got to protect it. I've got to protect it. So if you just imagine your energy body, a piece of your energy body, standing in front of the door to that room, constantly being on alert, protecting it, that's the energy drain that's happening right now. And if somebody is willing to go to the efforts to break in and steal something, they're clearly honoring it and appreciating it and needing it and using it more. That's super harsh to say, and it may not be relevant in this case, but it's something to think about, right? Literally the energy's not moving at all because nothing's being done with this stuff. And if somebody came and stole it, the energy would shift. The decision would have been made. So it would be released and then the energy would start flowing. So it's just food for thought. And if somebody's willing to see the value in something, they're clearly getting the value from it. They might sell it. They might make money from it. So there's this circulation of energy that happens. And if the thievery never happens, I hope it never does, but if it doesn't happen and you go through that process of taking the time to look at the items, decide on the items and move the items on, you're also shifting the energy. So once you make a decision on it, energy moves. And that's when it starts to feel better in your space. And that's when there's space for new opportunities and new things to come into your life. So I wanted to put that out there because it did pop into my head, and I always listen to those, intuitive messages that come in. In a one-on-one session, we might have had a conversation, and I might have, eliminated that and not even brought it up because the information I got from our conversation would say otherwise. But I thought it was worth mentioning here because if you have a bunch of stuff and it's shoved in a corner, and it's valuable, it's the value of it is still not being honored and appreciated. And so it's weighing the energy of the stuff down, it's weighing the energy of the house down, it's weighing the energy of the people in the house down. Whereas if you took some time to review it all and look at it and maybe bring out one or two pieces that really are valuable and that do have a beautiful history that you want to honor and appreciate, and you put them up there, suddenly the stories change and they're lifting the energy of the house. So, food for thought. And then the other thing I wanted to say about this is that it's really baby steps, like especially if you have a lot to go through in order to declutter and get to a point where you feel like the energy of the house is more positive. Like the clutter will weigh the things down, and the responsibility of dealing with the clutter will weigh your energy down. And that makes it really hard to move through life and to feel good and to be receptive when luck and other opportunities come your way. But you can shift that by doing the decluttering process and using the Feng Shui process. And the one thing that I will say is to take baby steps and use the energy to your benefit when you have a whole bunch of things to declutter. So for example, what I will do sometimes if I have like a room that needs to be, like I'm just avoiding the room, it's just full of stuff. Right now that's the case with our garage because all of my mother-in-law's stuff came and a lot of it is just in boxes and it hasn't been dealt with yet. And it's easy to just keep ignoring it. But if you really want to move yourself beyond that ignoring point to the point where you're taking action, you can use the energy of your space and your surroundings to get you moving. And so some of the things that I do is I might go down and I might turn the light on in that room 24/7 for a couple of days. I might open the doors and the windows in that room and let some air circulate in that space. I might turn on a fan in that space. Sometimes I'll even go and I'll hang, let me grab this, like a faceted crystal like this in the room, which lifts and circulates the energy. So there are things that you can do to start freshening up the energy, making the space a little bit more pleasant for you to go down into, get the energy moving in the room, and it will start to call you into that space. The other thing you can do is just set a timer for 15 minutes and without any tasks in mind, just go sit in that room. Or just go walk through the property where the things are, where the landscaping stuff is. Just go look at it. One of the things I've done in the past is just gone and sit in the middle of the room, kind of quiet meditation, sit there and just look around. And normally what starts happening for me is there's one thing that will start talking to me, it will keep calling my attention to it. And within 15 minutes, I can't stand still sitting there. I have to go move the thing, make a decision on the thing, donate the thing, whatever it is, right? But it's impossible to not do anything. So that's something that's worked for me in the past. So I hope that answers the question. What do I do with things that are giving off a bad vibe, that feel really heavy, but in the end they're useful and they're needed? What I would question is if they are giving off that bad vibe, or it feels heavy and you're ignoring the vibe, it's not actually being useful. It's not actually serving you. It's really draining you. It's really making life hard to move through. So that's what I would end this with, is that I really think it's important to think that, it may have a use, but if you're not going to put it to use, it may have a reason to be appreciated, but if you're not going to go appreciate it, then it's not serving you. It's not being useful. It's actually doing the opposite, and it's draining you. It's depleting you, and it's blocking energy and blocking potential for future opportunity and energy to flow your way. That's where the good luck comes in. I hope that answers the question. If anybody has any other questions that come up, put it in the comments and I'll pop back here and check in on this a little bit later. I really think that that was something positive to answer in terms of this. One thing that I wanted to say about that last example of having, stuff stored in a storage unit, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and I want to bring this kind of full circle. A lot of times as entrepreneurs, we have a whole vault full of ideas or notes or plans or intellectual property. And in the same way, we are holding on to it and like protecting it because we don't want somebody else to steal it. We don't want somebody else to use it, but we're also not doing anything with it on our own. And I want you to think about that in terms of how that's draining the energy of you and the energy of your business. And it may be a brilliant idea, but it may, if you're not going to bring it to light in a certain amount of time, it's probably draining you or blocking the energy to something even better if you're not paying attention to it. Food for thought. Yeah. So I hope that goes well.